All right, I think we have critical mass, so I think we can get started on time because I want to make sure our speakers have as much time as they have to give us robust information as well as to answer your questions. And as you know, Huva takes questions, so if you would put them in there as they come up, then we'll try to get them answered definitely by and leave plenty of time. So my name is Cindy Ryu, State Representative from the 32nd Legislative District, serving my 8th term in the Washington State Legislature. And I am Madam President until tomorrow morning. And then, let's see, and I am happy to be here to welcome you and to introduce you to the Keeping an Eye on the Ball, a binational approach to hosting the World Cup hosting the world during the 2026 FIFA World Cup for men's games. So with that, we acknowledge that present-day Bellevue, Washington is located on the traditional and unceded territories of the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Snoqualmie, and other Coast Salish tribes who have made their homes on these lands along these waters since time immemorial and who are still here today. And so I would like to turn to the policy expert between the two co-chairs, Dave Cohen. Yay! I think you're supposed to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam President, and welcome everybody to this session. Thank you for attending. And to begin, I thought I would share some perspective about the size and importance of the tourism industry as a mainstream economic sector. We always think of tourism as tourism, but really we're an economic sector like everybody else. And I'll speak from a Canadian perspective. Did you know that in Canada, tourism is a key driver of export revenue? In fact, international spending is a leading service export in Canada. And you may ask, well, how leading is it? Well, I'm pleased to tell you that according to Destination Canada's data collective, tourism ranked as Canada's top service export prior to 2019. And now that the pandemic is behind us, it's probably back in top position. So for Canada, in 2023, international visitor spending contributed to 13.8% of all service export revenue. And in descending order, it placed well ahead of many, many other services like professional management consulting, telecommunications, computer and information services, technical and trade related and other business services. So truly, tourism in Canada is a multi-billion-dollar export industry, and it's the same case in the United States. So relevant to today's discussion, for many decades, each of our respective countries have been each other's primary source market. So PINWR's involvement in regional tourism in the preparation for FIFA, I think the panel would agree, is very important. Now, this morning I described a couple of key areas that PINWR has been focusing on to improve cross-border travel. Also important for FIFA preparation has been PINWR's collaboration in other key areas, which we'll unpack this afternoon. Firstly, the Regional Tourism and Traveler Information Portal, a Know Before You Go initiative that has the potential to greatly ease cross-border travel. And secondly, PINWR's continual quest to foster border pilot projects, so stay tuned. And there have been other key discussions over the past year related to supply chains and other important travel-related fields. So to begin our discussions this afternoon, we'll hear from Nana Sloan, President of Pacific Economic Development Canada, aka PacificCan. This is important because PINWR received Canadian federal funding to develop a destination management strategy to advance Canada-US cross-sector visitor travel in advance of marquee events such as the FIFA 2026 World Cup, and support the safety, efficiency, and ease of cross-border travel for visitors through better communication and streamlined processes. So the PacificCan Tourism Growth Program is focused on accelerating international tourism and travel resiliency in British Columbia. And after we hear from Nana, we're going to have Doug McLaren, Program Manager from PINWR, to describe the program. Before joining PacificCan, Nana Sloan had several senior leadership positions within the Canadian federal government. She was the Regional Director General of the West and North at Environment and Climate Change Canada, and she also led Natural Resource Canada's Indigenous Partnerships Office in the West. She also served as the Director General of of Operations for British Columbia at Western Economic Diversification Canada. And previously, and this is very interesting, she was VP of Corporate Affairs and the Corporate Secretary at Canada Line Project Management Limited. Those of you from Vancouver, that will sound familiar because she helped develop the rapid transit line connecting Vancouver, Richmond, and the Vancouver International Airport. So, Nana, I will call you to the front. We look forward to your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Dave, for the introduction, but also for your leadership in the region around this topic and many others that deal with our shared tourism priorities. We very much appreciate it at Pacifican. So my name's Nana, as you heard, and the agency that I have the privilege and pleasure of leading does a lot of work in BC with agencies and partners across the country and in this region. And we're very proud to be partners in Penwar, as well as the Cascadia Innovation Corridor and many other groups, partner with groups that are thinking about our shared priorities. Our mandate is prosperity, enduring prosperity and building enduring prosperity for British Columbians and Canadians. So that's where we focus. Before I speak to you a little bit about the opportunity we're focused on today, I just want to acknowledge again, Madam President and Representative Ryu. The conference, the summit has been a tremendous success already. We're at the midway point, and I know I've heard just a lot of really energetic discussion about the state of our relationships, as well as, of course, the state of our collaboration and how we can strengthen that. So thank you very much. I also just want to acknowledge those who are on the panel with me. Solomon Wong, President and CEO of InterVistas Consulting, Dr. Lori Trotman, Director, Border Policy Research Institute, Laura Dawson, I think is joining us from Future Borders Institute, and Doug, as was mentioned earlier. We appreciate Penwar bringing us together for all of these discussions. And I think that we're actually going to get not just a discussion of collaboration, but a demonstration of what collaboration can produce on this panel today, which I'm really excited to be seeing. Representative Ryu gave us a land acknowledgement. I'd just like to add to that and recognize that the tournament, all of the games will take place, at least in the Pacific Northwest, on lands that have been home to the Coast Salish peoples of the Pacific Northwest since time immemorial. This region, through our Indigenous peoples, has always been a place of trade, of deep connection, and of kinship. And that was long before the current borders existed. So it's fitting, actually, that we're here to build on these strengths and on these connections. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the FIFA opportunity, and this is something you may know quite a lot about. So forgive me if I cover ground that you're well aware of, but I just want to set the context for the discussion that's going to come with the panel. And specifically, I mentioned earlier that there are connections, including Indigenous kinship connections that existed long before the border did. And of course, the FIFA Men's World Cup 2026 will also transcend borders. And this is a tremendous opportunity, a first. And at Pacifican, we really share the belief that it will be a catalyst for connection, innovation, and growth across our region, a real opportunity to help others understand the identity of the region as a region, in addition to the specific places that we all come from. The World Cup is, as you know, the largest sporting event in the world. The tournament will have an audience that is greater than the Summer Olympics, the Champions League, European Champions League, the Tour de France, Formula One, NFL, and Rugby World Cup combined. So it's big. And it's also, with that size, of course, the most watched competition on Earth. So even for those who won't be visiting, it will be watched. If we just think about Canada, and I know I'll learn more about viewership in the United States, but just in Canada, 84% of Canadians tuned in to watch the World Cup in Qatar, and that was a pretty significant time change. So it's going to be bigger. And when we think about that period between June 11th and July 19th next year, 48 teams, 5 different continents, and all that's involved, we know that the impact will go far beyond the pitch. And so it should. We're glad that it will. The tournament is expected to generate over $1 billion Canadian in visitor spending in British Columbia and Canada, and over $925 million, as I understand it, in US dollar economic impact for the Seattle area. With this comes an opportunity to leverage the event to showcase the region's assets. Certainly in the lower mainland of BC, the region and beyond in BC, we're thinking about that. And together we're thinking about it in terms of the cross-border region. So we have that opportunity to showcase the assets and drive investment attraction as well, potentially for fast-growing industries that are important to the region. And there are many of them. I won't mention them, but there are many. Businesses and communities across the region will receive some tourist bump, some boom from this tournament, along with the matches, related events and activities. There'll be excitement, there'll be energy, and things like the FIFA fan festivals that I think will just expand the energy are being planned around the games themselves in the Lower Mainland, and as I understand it, across Washington. So as we welcome visitors from around the world, we ought to ask ourselves, how can we collectively, and we have asked ourselves, how can we collectively deliver a successful tournament and create a lasting impact in the Pacific Northwest? Both of those things will and should happen. Unlocking opportunities from the World Cup takes planning, collaboration, resources, hard work, and we're going to hear about some of that work in a few minutes. And we've got high expectation here in Penwar. That's part of what drives, I think, the collaboration, is that really high expectation and aspiration to be doing things that are going to impact the livelihoods, prosperity, and people in the region in a positive way. And that's important, having that high aspiration. It will be over the series of collaborations, this event, but also others, that we realize those aspirations. It won't all be from the one event, but this one is important. So I'm here just to share that PacificCan is trying to play a part in terms of making that material impact and working with partners here in Penwar to do just that. You heard a little bit from Dave about our tourism growth program. We think it's an incredibly important program, not just for centers like Vancouver and in this case, Seattle, in the context of this collaboration, but also for communities across BC, smaller communities who are also working hard to improve their tourism business and their local ecosystems to be able to host people. So we want for those small and medium-sized businesses and communities in British Columbia, as well as beyond, to benefit from this opportunity. With an opportunity of this size, it's important to extend the economic benefits of the games. There will be tourism and visitor impacts and benefits, and we really look forward to those. We've wanted to extend them with some of our investments in partner work. One example of that is with Indigenous communities and working specifically with Indigenous Tourism British Columbia to raise the awareness of Indigenous cultural and sports tourism in BC. And there's some connection as well. So that's something we've been working on, working with Destination BC to implement a global market development program for BC tourism operators, and of course with Penwar. To develop and to support Penwar in developing a cross-border travel strategy to improve the visitor experience during the games, leading up to and during the games. So that's what we're here to talk more about and learn more about from our panelists in terms of the project that Penwar is working on. So what are we trying to achieve with this project? Faster and smoother border crossings to the extent that we can. There is a lot, there's a lot that is happening at our borders, a lot that our border agencies are doing. And to the extent we can support them in working towards faster and smoother border crossings, we want to do that through this project and other work. Creative solutions to cross-border transit challenges. there are going to be challenges. We know that. And so thinking ahead about those challenges and the kinds of things we can be doing, what can help for the, the big events themselves, but also what can help beyond in terms of the traffic that we see, experience, and promote every day. And then strengthening our region's reputation for world-class gatherings and for business, and building the expertise needed to deliver these kinds of events in the region and across the cross-border region in the future. This is really significant. So again, as I said, today's panelists are going to share more about how the project that Penware is working on leverages engagement, research, and strategic planning to create that better travel experience. But the impacts of this project and the strength of this project doesn't happen in a vacuum. And success really does come from partners who bring their own commitment, energy, shared visions, mandates, et cetera, to the group. So again, my thanks to Penware and everybody involved in helping make border crossings a smoother experience. I guess as we listen to this discussion, what I have in mind is this: the World Cup is our chance to shape how the world sees the Pacific Northwest in a way that we have not had before. And our region isn't just a place that has an exceptional quality of life and talented people. It is an ideal place to visit, invest, innovate, and build a business. And so I'm really looking forward to the opportunities to shape that into the narrative that we share around the identity of the Pacific Northwest as people visit. And as the tournament draws closer, I invite, and even in today's discussion, I invite you to think about as well the long-term impact you'd like to see the World Cup have here in this region. What does a truly successful tournament look like for you, for your organization, for us in our collaboration? Is it economic impact? Is it an unforgettable visitor experience, a lasting partnership that is created, or something else? Maybe all of the above. But what is it that you're looking for from this tournament, and how does that connect back to here our mandate at Penware? And then what would a lasting legacy for the Pacific Northwest look like after the games? And what can we be doing now? What we are doing now can help us with that work after the games. So just as we're preparing for the tournament, let's share some ideas about what will outlast it. It may be a more complicated conversation today than when we started, but that probably means it's all the more important as well. So however we end up managing our trade relationships, whatever, as we heard yesterday, happens on August 2nd. Again, I would just underline that our people-to-people connections have always been strong, will remain strong, and will help us as we look forward to the attention of the globe on this region through the tournament and through our work together beyond. So, there you go.
Thank you, Nana. There was a lot in there to listen to, and I like the fact that you're recognizing there are going to be challenges, and we have opportunity to work through those challenges and learn, and what do we want moving forward from this amazing opportunity. I'd now like to call on Doug McLaren to come forward and talk a little bit about the Pacific End Tourism Growth Strategy from the Penware side of the equation. Doug?
Good afternoon, everybody. Madam President. Yeah, this is a terrific project. It's real important to Penware family. I'm with Penware Canada. My colleague, Tara Evans in the back there. Everybody should know Tara. We work together on the project, so it's a cross-border project with a cross-border team, which is kind of cool. I think a lot of our partners here are funders. This project was funded by Pacifican, and Nana and her team in Kelowna are a terrific group of people to work with. There was also funding from the BC government and also funding from YVR to kind of round out the budget on this project. Dave already kind of covered this slide for me, so thank you, Dave. It's going to be a lot shorter, my part of this whole thing, but this is the kind of the project scope. we're dealing with, obviously, a lot of work with stakeholders from various parts of the sector. And a lot of work, which we'll talk about later, with some of the cross-border issues with moving vehicles, transportation, legacy is an important part of our deliverables on this project. We have to produce this management strategy that will be the legacy piece that provides a framework for subsequent marquee events in Vancouver. We've had, you've heard probably the stories about the Taylor Swift concerts, where it was, cheaper to stay at a hotel in Calgary and fly out to Vancouver for the day and back than it was to stay in Vancouver. There was challenges at the border with US citizens not realizing you can't get into Canada without a passport, or if you had something flagged in the system. So, we're trying to solve some of those issues. A lot of cross-sector forums we're working on this initiative. Maybe the next slide, please, Tara. You want me to try to do that? Everybody, this has been dangerous. Everybody I've watched trying to use that clickers had challenges all day, but high level, just to give you a sense, project deliverables, there's a lot of research and analysis, and we're working with just a wide group of individuals to get that information. Some of our partners here are helping us gather that information. You'll hear about that later. Two key sort of deliverables are a know before you go tool that I think we'll get a chance to see today, and a regional tourism dashboard that we work with Victoria Tourism on that file. Some of our key deliverables, it started in Whistler a year ago, really. And there's activities again today that are part of this project. We did a FIFA border pilot project in Vancouver. A FIFA emergency management planning luncheon in Seattle. US Consulate sponsored a cross-border FIFA workshop in the spring. We did a tourism and borders workshop in May of 2022, which I think Solomon's going to talk a little bit about later. And we're going to have some subsequent sessions on that file in the fall, and probably in December when the teams are released for the region, and then maybe something again in March before the end of our project, leading up to June. And then in June of this year, it was in partnership with the RIA project out of Seattle, but there was a cross-border supply chain and FIFA transportation emergency planning workshop in Bellingham for 2 days. So I think that should give you a sense of to me, it's what a real broad breadth of organizations and stakeholders that we're trying to engage on this project and get their feedback, and a lot of problems we're trying to solve. So I think we're going to be very successful. We got a great group of partners. There's great people in this room that we get a chance to work with. So glad you could make it today, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Doug, for that overview. For the next part of our presentation, we have some panelists joining us. Of course, we've all met. And on the end, next to her is Dr. Lori Troutman, Director of the Border Policy Research Institute at Western Washington University. So I guess we'll hear a little bit about what happened at yesterday's border session. And are you going to be talking about the land border survey as well? Excellent. Okay. And I'm excited. Katie, I'm David. Hi. We've got Katie Willis, Director of Destination Sales, Conventions and Meetings for Bellingham Whatcom County Tourism. And I'm very interested to hear you speak about Bellingham's FIFA fan zone and what you're planning. You're going to leak all your secrets out so we can all follow your excitement, and an overview of how Bellingham is preparing for cross-border visitation. And Solomon, who doesn't know Solomon? Everybody knows Solomon. So we've got President and CEO of InterVistas Consulting. You're going to talk a little bit about some of the workshops that Doug touched on, and border messaging, transportation discussions. Between you and Lori, we have the experts in the room here. So this is a real privilege to hear. So I guess we're gonna turn this over. This is like turning the keys over to Solomon, I guess, and over to you. Good job.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here today in terms of the long run view of being able to look at the history of border innovation. This morning's session actually highlighted something that one of our participants brought forward in terms of the ability to have enhanced driver's licenses put forward. And I think we have an exciting time in terms of there's a generational change to start to move to other kinds of technologies, namely smartphones. So as Doug explained, we have had a number of engagement sessions, and part of this is also cultivating the kinds of folks looking at foreign direct investment, the visitor economy, the whole return on investment for why we're having FIFA in terms of both Seattle and Vancouver having 13 matches to be able to harness upon those economic outputs. So in dealing with this as well, if I can have the next slide, the ability of managing the kinds of things around how do you actually get folks going across the border? One of the questions that we had yesterday during the border session is why? Why are we even having this conversation? So I'm going to boil it down to three key things. Number one, limited amount of time. We heard about the Taylor Swift effect. Do we want large queues to be able to get across the border? Number two, let's pay close attention to what Ambassador Hoekstra talked about yesterday around the nature of security and safety. So it's not just about prosperity for each of our countries. It's also about the degree to which border security is important. And number three, happy visitors. Happy visitors are return visitors. They may come back. They may tell friends and family. It's just the word of mouth that we can have the number of eyeballs looking at our region. And I think it's important to be able to then work with our border friends, and I'm glad to see folks from U.S. Customs as well joining us as well, because this is a true partnership around the kinds of reasons that we are looking at time. So I think, Dave, you're probably quite right. I'm just going to ask for clicks, please, from the back. So first click is just what does limited time mean? Well, there are three key things. What can you do more of before the border? The ability of thinking about the border as not just a line in the sand, but it's also something that you're able to do a lot further ahead of time before you actually get to a physical border. So the more we can do that now into the future. I had a straw poll yesterday, and many of the folks in this room were there, and half of participants were either Nexus or Global Entry members. So that also tells us that this audience understands some of the value of, well, you do that in advance and you actually have fewer secondary referrals that you can measure in terms of some of the benefits. Number two, and Laura and Jack will also provide the demo later on know before you go. It's confusing on a good day in terms of the average visitor can't navigate through multiple government websites. And from now until June next year, the story on what's needed may change a couple more times. Is it additional visa fees? The US Customs app has changed names 3 times. The Canadian app may well change from ArriveCan to Advanced Declaration. So these are constructs that are hard even for folks within the travel economy to actually keep on top of. But these are tools that we do need the population coming into our region or moving between Canada, US, and back to actually understand. And then the third part of time is that we want to make the best use of border officer time. Is there value for border officers opening up documents, turning it around to the right picture page? Let's shave seconds, minutes off of transactions, and that's going to make sure that the kinds of volumes we may see start to flow a bit more. Border threats. Some of the broad principles, even though Going back to the 1995 Shared Border Accord, I started in the business of borders 2 years after that, but some of the principles that were put forward, let's push the border out, let's separate low and known risk and expedite those flows away from high risk. That has never been more relevant now, especially with the different kinds of border threats that are being looked at. So being able to focus on that, and also to some of our things that we heard yesterday around one example around we have UK, German, other nationals we want to welcome into the region in order for the form called I-94 to not be done at the border. Let's not have them gum up secondary. Let's make sure that we get as much of that done in advance. And so there are some of those kinds of things that will come for folks flying into Vancouver, coming to see a game in Vancouver, and then may come by land down to the land border. Let's make sure those kinds of flows are important to make sure that secondary processing is just left for those who need additional scrutiny. And then the third point on happy visitors is we do need to have, if I can have another click on here, just the fan experience, the seamless travel, and some of the things that we can definitely have off-the-shelf technologies, especially for some of the folks in this room who are knee-deep on the technology side of things. These are not pie in the sky things. These are available standards and items so that if you have 12 different parts of the travel ecosystem, you don't need 12 different solutions. You have the interoperability to get to that seamless travel. And then happy visitors gets to some of the economic impact numbers that Nana was describing around the whole benefit just in terms of having the Men's World Cup itself, but also in the years that follow in terms of the buzz about our region, and especially looking at last year's PenWare Summit, where we heard in Whistler that the amount of foreign direct investment coming from this event versus the Olympics, the Men's World Cup has just those rings of economic benefits. So let's take this on the next slide to what can we do with these three areas. So based on some of the sessions that we held with the tourism sector May 24th, as well as the U.S. Consul General's event hosted in Vancouver, we see some areas that are important. Number one, digital travel credential. If we have the ability to align and prioritize markets, we have the ability to make sure that seamless travel is in place. Number two, on trusted travelers. Now's the time to actually get the enrollment blitz to take place so that we maximize that low-risk traveler to be part of the environment. There may be some activities that are also able to fast track some of the things where we're talking to some folks who actually had to fly folks into a remote processing site just to even get an appointment. These are solvable things. But the other aspect that's important to note is that yesterday, U.S. Customs announced that Croatia was added to global entry. So that's in addition to pathways for German and UK nationals to be part of the U.S. Trusted Traveler Program. Could Canada also think about leveraging that risking method to accelerate the ability for folks to actually come into Canada in a similar way? Those are some things that, because of the arrangements that the United States has had with multiple countries, beyond just Canada, that is a long-standing agenda item to be able to grow that. And then lastly, advanced processing, leveraging smartphones. The ability for the region to raise their hands up and say, I understand CBSA is moving towards an advanced declaration. For the sites that already have this at airports, it has proven to be a time saver. Well, that is the uncharted territory for the land border where you don't have manifest review that's possible because private cars don't have that kind of advanced notification. So what happens if you actually maximize the number of folks who can actually do a declaration using the existing app? These are things that CBSA needs to support towards accelerating some of the things that will be relevant for some of the things that Lori will talk a little bit more about in terms of some potential areas. A couple more slides as well for food for thought as well, because it was raised around the history of enhanced driver's licenses. So what you're looking at is a graph showing the amount of passport ownership by state and province. Dark blue, high degrees of ownership of passports. Dark red, low degree of passport ownership. Calculating this out, there are roughly 155 million people on this continent that don't have the ability to have a passport to cross a border. So the ability of looking at this may well highlight the ability for the catchment area for visitation to grow if we're able to get to those individuals coming inbound to a market. On the next slide, we've also got a history that was raised in the morning session around when we had this problem with the passport rule. Penwar played a critical role to highlight enhanced driver's licenses. These are being phased out. So I think there's 2 more months left before British Columbia turns down the EDL program. So it begs the question, well, what next? So the next on the next slide is the ability for mobile driver's licenses. Raise your hand if you're from Alaska in here, Montana. Well, if you find delegates from Alaska and Montana, please congratulate them because Alaska is the only place in the Penwar region with mobile driver's licenses. Montana has passed a statute and it's in implementation. The rest of the Penwar geography on the next slide, you'll find in blue is the jurisdictions that are studying, advancing. In purple, those are the states that have mobile driver's licenses. And this is something to think about as a successor logically to enhanced driver's license for border crossings, because it can actually get to more potential visitors that will help go from point A to B without the need to go through the elaborate process of getting an actual passport. We've done it before in this region in terms of pushing the bounds of technologies. Well, now's the time to leapfrog to the next generation. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Lori to talk about some of the things that we're thinking about as well in terms of pilot projects in the region.
Thanks, Solomon. Round of applause for Solomon while he sits down. I'm going to sit because I don't have a PowerPoint, but I'm Lori Troutman, the director of the Border Policy Research Institute at Western Washington University. We were created about 20 years ago through a partnership with a professor at Western and U.S. Senator Patty Murray, really out of a recognition that the events of September 11th fundamentally altered the Canada-U.S. border, and the state of Washington should have a research entity dedicated to understanding that border and helping to conduct research that can improve basically the cross-border mobility of goods and people through that border. So that's what I do, focusing mainly on the land border. So I'm going to just touch on 2 things today. A little bit of the work that Solomon had mentioned that we've been working on for probably well over a year now, and that we addressed in the border session yesterday, and then also a cross-border survey that my institute is just wrapping up in partnership with several other entities up in Whatcom County. So as you've already heard, large-scale tourism events are challenging for the border, and they're particularly challenging for the land border because unlike air travel, we don't know who's coming and when they're coming at the land border. Anybody can show up at any time. So most of the information that's being processed at the border is happening upon arrival, and that can lead to not only a lot of congestion, a lot of wait times, but also travelers showing up uneducated. So we have these challenges. The Taylor Swift concert was mentioned because that's a really, really great example of challenges related to either congestion, when you just have so many people trying to cross the border at one time, and challenges related to uneducated travelers. I was shocked when I read the social media reports of fans from the US trying to go to the Vancouver show. Was that just last December? And how many of them were completely crushed because they had spent so much money and were so excited to come to this Taylor Swift concert, and they didn't realize that they didn't actually have what they needed to cross the border, or they weren't admissible because they had something like a DUI charge or a marijuana charge. So the last thing we want is from people from all over the world to be coming here, to be spending their time and their money, and to not be able to cross the border, or to get delayed for an extensive period of time and potentially miss something like going to a fan zone party or going to a game. So I often think of the challenges we have at the land border as sort of limited toolbox we have. We've got staffing. I know CBP and CBSA will be upping their staffing as much as possible during the games. We have infrastructure, but physical infrastructure is very limited, right? You can't sort of expand it and contract it. And that's where technology comes into play as the most promising solution in regards to infrastructure expansion. And then, of course, the travelers and making sure they know what they need before they reach the border. And Laura Dawson will be talking about that a little bit later. So yesterday in the border session, was anybody in the border session? I know some of you were, but okay, a fair number. Well, that's great. So one of the things we've been focusing on is what could be a legacy coming out of preparing for the World Cup games. The enhanced driver's license was mentioned, which is, I think, a great example of how binational and state and provincial collaboration can rise to the challenge of an event and produce a long-lasting benefit. Right now in the state of Washington, our driver's licenses are not Real ID compliant. So either you have a passport or you have an enhanced driver's license. And the enhanced driver's license is now what we need to travel even domestically. So it's great that we have that is now meeting a need that, of course, we didn't anticipate back when they were created. But I think that's what we sort of want to do in this border challenge. We don't want to just sort of tackle the congestion that's occurring during the games. We want to create something that will bring long-lasting benefits to the region. So one of the things we did in the border session yesterday, we were joined by our good friends here at CETA, who are also here to answer any difficult technical questions that you might have about this, is how can travelers share their information with border agents before they arrive at the border? Again, this is a benefit for the border agencies because they know who's coming. They're not getting that information right upon arrival. And it's a benefit for the traveler because if you're like me, and you have everything you need to cross the border and you still get nervous. I don't know why I get nervous when I cross the border, but I do. I'd sure like to send all of that information before I even get on my train or get on my bus and have somebody else sort of dealing with it as I'm crossing the border. If you also traveled during COVID and you had ArriveCan, that's essentially more or less a little bit the idea of ArriveCan, which is can you use your phone to share information with the border agencies before you enter Canada, an example of ArriveCan. And we know ArriveCan had its challenges, but it was a pretty interesting proof of concept for being able to share passenger information before arriving at the land border. So something we did in the border session yesterday, which is a concept that many of us, regional and binational stakeholders have been working on for about a year now, is could we do a pilot project here in the BC-Washington region in advance of the games to really test out how travelers could share their information digitally with the border agencies at the land border before arrival. So one concept is to look at a motor coach. So for those of you who's ever taken a bus across the border, it's not the most popular form of transportation, but it's a great way for moving a large number of people. So right now, if you cross the border in a bus here at the Pacific Highway Port of Entry, typically what happens is the bus arrives at the border, everybody gets off of the bus, gets their luggage, and clears, we'll say U.S. Customs and Border Protection in this example. We've done studies pre-COVID that showed the average processing time and delay time for a bus runs around a half an hour. And of course, that's give or take a wide range depending on who's on the bus and the time of day. But on average, about 2 minutes to process each traveler. So you can imagine if you are an elderly person, if you have any mobility issues, getting off that bus, getting your luggage, walking through the process, getting back on the bus is quite an endeavor. So what we were doing yesterday is we walked through the pilot project of could you, instead of doing this type of processing, could everybody use their phones to share their digital identification through a secure platform where you own your own data? And as you board the bus, the bus driver, for example, would ping your phone and it would verify that you say who you are. It would basically verify everything that's on your passport and send that in a manifest mode to the border for the officers to review before the bus arrives. The technology is there. It's actually pretty straightforward. Again, I can't answer the hard questions about it, but the experts are in the room. And I think the will is there to try to test this out. And the result would be, instead of having everybody get off the bus, instead of having this lengthy time for processing, you could potentially, more or less roll through the border. You'd have to stop, of course, and a border officer could decide to get on or not. But the processing time for each person is basically the time it takes for you to look at a camera and take a picture of yourself. So again, this is could be a pilot project. We're hoping this is something we could test out that would again have longer term benefits for creating a more efficient process at the border and also creating a lot more certainty for the tourism industry, because we won't have people being delayed, having these unexpected delays at the border. I think that's all I'll say about that now, but I think we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. The other thing I wanted to mention is some very preliminary results from a study that we've been working on. This is a study that is really a true collaboration in the binational sense. It's called the Passenger Vehicle Survey. And about every 5 years, we partner with our Council of Governments to survey travelers as they're crossing the border, our 4 land ports of entry in both directions here between Western BC and Western Washington. It's funded by Transport Canada, by US Federal Highways, with support from provincial and state agencies. This year, we also received some funding from Pacifican via Penwar to support this survey, to include some questions that were specific just to FIFA. So we just wrapped this. Oh, and I should say we work also very closely with US Customs and Border Protection and Canada Border Services Agency, who allow us to have a team of students at the border actually stopping people as they're crossing and asking them a variety of questions. So we just wrapped it up a couple days ago. So the findings I'm going to share are very, very preliminary and very high level, because I haven't had a chance to really sort of comb through all of the details. But we collected around 6,200 responses. These are people traveling across the border going north, across the border going south. And what we found this year, which is an odd year to do a passenger vehicle study, admittedly, because the nature of cross-border travel this year is not typically what it is. But we were waiting for kind of a post-COVID return to normal, and it has become clear that that may never happen. We may be in a sort of constant state of flux in regards to cross-border travel. We found around half of the people crossing are crossing for vacation and recreation. So here in our region, unlike other regions along the Canada-US border, was a lot of discretionary travel that really dominates the movement back and forth here. And around 20% of travelers were crossing for family reasons. So we included 2 questions related to FIFA. We asked people first, were they aware that the FIFA World Cup games were coming to Vancouver and Seattle? And then we asked them if they expected to engage in any kind of cross-border activity to attend any FIFA-related events. So not just games, but things like fan zone and watch parties. So the awareness was pretty good. 70% of travelers said that, yes, they are aware that the World Cup games are coming to this region. Eventually, I'll be able to break that down by residency. So we have a pretty good idea of if there's certain pockets in the Lower Mainland or even in Washington where people might be less aware of the games, which could be an opportunity for more education and more outreach. And then when we asked if people expected to attend any FIFA-related events, the majority said no. 70% said they were not planning to cross the border to attend those events. And then there was 12% that said yes, and the numbers go down from there. So again, in regards to tourism, we'll be able to kind of slice those up and figure out where people are based that are expressing these different intentions. But based on this survey, which is only the traveling public essentially over the last 5 weeks or so, we know that most local residents, at least, are less likely to be engaging in cross-border travel. But of course, we'll be welcoming people from all over the world. So hopefully that can help inform some outreach efforts, some efforts around where we might target things like Know Before You Go. And I will leave it at that and hand it over to Katie.
I do have some slides. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Willis. I'm the Director of Destination Sales for Visit Bellingham and Whatcom County Tourism. Thank you for including me today, and I thought maybe it would be fun, at least for me, to share with you about what we're doing on a, micro scale of in our own community around this conversation. Go ahead and advance, please. First, just a little bit about Visit Bellingham and our reach and our scope. I know that you all know that we are a DMO, an official destination marketing organization. Our job is to promote our community for visitors 50 miles plus and away to come and stay and spend money and enjoy and then go and tell their friends about it. Has anyone been to Bellingham? Has everyone been to Bellingham? Good. You are personally invited to come to Bellingham from me. Go ahead and advance. Go ahead and advance. So a little bit about us. In 2024, we saw $775 million in traveler and visitor spending. That puts us fifth as a county in Washington State. And we are on an upward projection. That was a 3.5% increase from the year prior. You can advance. You can see here that we have bounced back from COVID and surpassed our 2019 visitor spending, and we are on a good, steady increase. You can see where it falls here. Accommodations receive the most amount of spending at 28%, followed by food and beverage. Then we've got retail sales, transportation, and recreation. Go ahead and advance. And then how that equates to our hospitality community and jobs, that means about 7,768 jobs in our community that depend on visitors. Go ahead. So you may be aware that the Seattle Local Organizing Committee for FIFA World Cup 2026 were doing their best to include the entire state and wanting to make sure that we all felt included. So their idea of creating fan zones was how that has come about. And so there's 9 official fan zones around the state, and Bellingham is one of them. Go ahead and advance. It's just that we're in a really unique position based on this whole discussion. I know that Philadelphia and New York are the 2 closest metropolitan cities that have games, but no one else is across an international border, and Bellingham is a border town. So we've got an interesting outlook on how do we want to engage with folks coming in. Go ahead and advance. You already know that Seattle is estimating up to 750,000 unique visitors just for the games. Vancouver expects to see 900,000 visitors just for those games. So again, we're right in the middle. So what our community has done is we decided to create a leadership group. We have done an MOU with Visit Bellingham, the city of Bellingham, and the port of Bellingham. And we wanted to create this structure so that we knew that there was a decision-making group and a budgeting group and how we wanted to roll this all out. The fan zone commitment for Seattle is that we will show and do a watch party for a minimum of 6 games that are shown in Seattle. We are already talking about the other US games we might want to show, and even the final, but at minimum, this is what our watch party will include. So I actually wish this picture was even bigger because this is a Port of Bellingham piece of property on the waterfront. We call it trackside, and in the middle there's actually a fantastic bike pump track that exists all year round. It's heavily used by our community. It's a gathering place already. We already have established festivals that take place on this piece of property. It's really dynamic. We have breweries and food already permanently in. We'll be bringing in more, of course, but just for planning purposes, we're setting our sights on about 10,000 people per watch party. That's our plan. We'll see how that shakes out, but you can see that the roles and responsibilities of the city versus the port versus tourism, we all have unique assets and resources. So the city's a project lead for us. We have actually went out to RFP and now hired an event planning company to physically put on our watch parties. They're a company out of Seattle, actually. They'll handle all permitting, heavy safety, security, fire and police. Those conversations are already happening like any of these communities. It's a little bit challenging because the intel of what teams will be playing well where doesn't happen until December. So that'll give us a lot of intel on what kinds of guests we might be expecting. And then, of course, the port, it's their venue. They have the infrastructure. And then Visit Bellingham, we're uniquely positioned to be doing a marketing and communication and fan experience. Within this, we have actually established 3 committees that have different stakeholders involved. We have a watch party committee, very event logistic heavy, a marketing and PR committee that is making plans for all of our website and possible app inclusion. And then we have a community engagement committee that's the piece that we really want to lean into the legacy too of what do we want after this in our own backyard. And we know it's going to be a local, locals heavy, but what do we, when this is all over, what do we want, to have remain? And therefore our colleges and our youth sports and will be heavily involved and invited to participate. And obviously this is downtown Bellingham, but the whole county, we want people to engage with these games, how they do best. So that it is not just centralized just in downtown. One of the things we're doing in terms of at Visit Bellingham with hospitality is we're investing in a hospitality and FIFA guide, so to speak, that'll be digital, that will go to all of our hoteliers, all of our restaurants, all of the communities that what is this? How do we, what can we do right at the front desk, right when you walk in the door, especially as it relates to border, like if we can be the hospitality community that we say we are, then hopefully then we can get people who want to come back and visit us again. I have a feeling that I'll just be at the border handing out bottles of water or something like, but I also think that we've got some creative ideas on should people have a challenge at the border, they're welcome at our watch parties and carving out space that you can be here. You don't have to pay. This is, let's VIP it up so that we save a possible experience. So thank you.
I'm going to Bellingham. When I check out that fan zone, I love the enthusiasm. So we're doing well on time, and we're going to be moving to the next part of the agenda. And we've maybe Solomon, do you want to introduce?
I guess the question is, do you want to do Q&As?
Yeah, well, yes, I'm looking to my technical assistant. Are we, let's do that. Thank you for that.
Testing, testing, yes.
So my question is to Ms. Bellingham. In your own words, define what a fan zone is, if you would, please.
Actually, I have not been to one myself, but now that we have been in these conversations in the community and the soccer fans start coming out of everywhere and the excitement around it of people who've actually been, in my definition, we are building a place that you can watch the games, but also have other experiences at the same time. It'll be 2 hours at least before kickoff. It'll be 2 hours after. It'll be an event. It'll be something to come to that you don't have to be diehard with whatever team that is playing, but you're going to get an experience that is all about the world's game.
The way I heard it is that it's kind of like a really big tailgate party whether you have a ticket to that game or not, you still can be a fan and still have some of the experience, because I heard it was going to be very competitive to get those tickets. We'll see. It depends on who can fly into United States, right? But that it will be a huge experience that obviously all 9 of them, I think, will be quite different depending on where they are and
Oh,
who
yes.
is.
Every community is organized
Right.
differently and
Right.
able to offer a different size event.
Yeah.
We happen to be doing this, but it's not all the same around the state.
So Dave is going to Bellingham. I'm going to downtown Seattle, whether I get a ticket or not. And then there's 7 other venues, and we should all put our photos together and see who did it the best. We should have a little contest.
There might be just that competition because there are so many communities excited about the fan zone experience, and we've heard some of the innovation and the excitement you're putting into it. But I think this is going to be from the organizing bodies as well, something that will look different in different communities, but is an aspect around the games in all of the host kind of regions, as I understand it.
And then I think depending on which countries get assigned to which city, that may look different. For instance, I'm a Korean and I can speak Korean almost fluently. So if Korea gets assigned to, let's say, Seattle, you can imagine how wild it's going to be up and down the I-5 corridor. Same thing with Vancouver, right? Depending on the country that you draw. All right. Are you?
Yeah, I hope that answered your question. Okay.
All right. There's 2 other questions. I'll be right there. How, in your own perspective, will you measure success for this complex cross-border event like this? And then should there be efforts to discuss what worked and what didn't after the fact? Will we be doing a postmortem, right? And to ensure that there isn't a loss of the core list knowledge and collaboration that's developed in this multi-year planning process. Go ahead.
Well, I'll take a crack at that. I think some of the success measures are going to be the degree to which we have got surge capacity for border transactions. So this is evident by the length of lineups. But I think from a visitor experience, it's also just the kinds of measures around what kinds of surveys we're going to have in terms of, would you come back? Would you look at some of the additional things that could create new visitors? But from a foreign direct investment standpoint, one of the things that's also going to be quite important is that you have a lot of locational decision type of activities that will take place. So talking to some of the folks in Seattle and Vancouver, the number of trips coming in for foreign multinationals wishing to look at settling an operation here, that's going to be part of the activity in June, July next year. So being able to measure what are the number of companies deciding to set up shop locally, that's also going to be something that is key to our region.
Maybe I'll just add a couple of thoughts. So in Canada, the lead federal ministry or department for the FIFA World Cup is actually our heritage ministry. And of course, that makes sense because Sport Canada is a part of that federal department. But so too is heritage. And so there is a lot of thinking about Canadian identity and the Canadian experience, the experience of Canadians in Canada around the World Cup and how Canada shows up on the world stage at the event. So that's something that I think people will be looking at in addition to the economic impacts, which Solomon mentioned, and the border experience. And then I would just underscore that point around foreign direct investment. So this is something I think we have an opportunity as agencies in the economic development and tourism space to do a little bit more work on. There is, once that schedule gets released in December, probably quite a bit of work that boards of trade and economic organizations will be thinking about what makes sense given the types of visitors who will be in our region.
And I might just quickly answer it in a different way. And, I would view success of our region leading the way in applying a new technology or new way to use technology at the border, particularly the land border. We have that legacy, whether it's the precursor to the Nexus program, which developed here, the first precursors to preclearance really developed here. I think it was the Victoria Clipper over 100 years ago. That was a pre-inspection pathway. So I hope we can continue to lead the binational effort in that legacy by, again, just applying a new way to use technology at the border, and also just an example of how we can continue to work together and collaborate to make the border work better.
Great. Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my question was actually a follow-up to the fan zone. So I had a trip to Europe during Euro Cup last year, and I had the pleasure of going to a fan zone that they had set up there. And, they had a huge, city square that was set up because it was in the city, big screen TVs. So there's 4 panels facing around, food trucks all over, beer, alcohol, bratwurst, and all the food to enjoy it. The thing that I liked was the games were not the local games. It was games throughout all of the different cities that were taking place. So I watched I think it was 2 games that one day. Is that the same intention for Seattle, is to play non-local games so that there's a continual stream of fans coming to the fan
Their
zone?
fan zone is going to be at the Seattle Center and on the waterfront. And I can't speak to that. I don't know what their programming will be. Maybe
There's no space to play soccer, but Shoreline, welcome to Shoreline, because we have a whole bunch of soccer fields.
oh,
So
you mean just on the TV, watching the other games
Oh, on
happening
TV.
around? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it at our, yeah. At least for us, I don't know what Seattle Center will do, but at least for us, the amount of investment and effort that is going to go into renting a 50-foot LED screen that will be permanent for this length of time. And the fact that we have this infrastructure that is heavily used in the summer by everybody who lives there. We are thinking there's no reason not to use this now that we have it set up. What else can we be doing? And I think there's a huge interest to just show a lot of other games besides the Seattle ones. It's anyone want to be a sponsor? Everything's possible. Just need the money. But yeah, and people and bodies and all of that.
And I think also all the bars and restaurants and anyone with a Zumba, big TV, they would love to have you as part of that unofficial fan zone. All right. Are there any temporary infrastructure being set up in either BC or Washington state for the World Cup other than the fan zones? I'm assuming this question is not that, okay. Other than we're spending what, $10 million, feels like billion, but $10 million on the soccer field?
So the base of reference we have for temporary facilities was a lead up to the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver, where there was a little bit of lead up to just make sure there's enough capacity. Part of the challenge we're dealing with, as you've heard referred to a couple of times, is we don't actually know what the game schedule is going to be until December. So we're not letting that stop the planning because there are some known qualifiers of teams coming forward, but just running some scenarios about the likely possibilities. As Madam President indicated, if South Korea has a game in Seattle, that's one possibility. If you've got other kinds of game matches, that will also provide a bit of scenario planning. So I think the key aspect here, as Lori indicated, it may not necessarily be physical infrastructure as much as can we actually get a process that is able to make sure you can double the throughput. Yesterday, talking to Bel Air Charters in terms of just running a bus to Vancouver from Washington State, getting that bus through in 15 minutes rather than 30 or 45 minutes. As is typical in terms of the transaction. You don't need to build new infrastructure, you just get a faster flow.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Gail Scott from the District of Souk. I was involved with some of the planning for 2010 Olympics. In fact, it was the Spirit Square program. And all throughout British Columbia, we talked to so many communities that wanted to have a Spirit Square, which is very much like a fan zone. Now, those Spirit Squares still exist today. Would there not be an opportunity to look beyond just Seattle, Bellingham, and little parts of inner Vancouver, reach out to the whole of the province and say, reactivate the Spirit Squares, put up the big screens, and then you've got fan zones everywhere.
We may not be able to use the brand FIFA, right? Because they own that and they control it very tightly. So is there a way for us to come up with an unofficial, but that we all recognize it as what that function is and go from there?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer all of this, but maybe just a small piece of it. I do know that the province of British Columbia, which is one of the partners for the FIFA games taking place in Canada, so specifically in British Columbia, is looking at the opportunity. So I don't know if it would be the same locations as the Spirit Squares. I think the question about, outside of FIFA kind of brand and experience is a different one. I can't speak to that, but I do know that the partners who are working with the with FIFA and FIFA Canada, for example, in Canada, are thinking about how to extend the experience beyond the Lower Mainland. So I think we'll hear more of that over the next while.
So just a quick note to that, you know, you have the official Super Bowl and everything else is the big game.
Ah, the big game. All right, thank you. All right, somebody owned that one. Get a website going. Any other questions? All right, thank you. I think we're ready for the next.
Thank you, Madam President. Actually, I had one quick channel changing question. The fan zone's so popular. But back to nuts and bolts and Real ID is the underpinning of the mobile driver's license. How pervasive is that adopted standard in North America? How can the tourism industry get behind promoting with our governments to make the mobile driver's license more pervasive?
There's a good news story here that few people recognize, that the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators actually is a standard-setting body for provinces and states on driver's licenses. So if you hold up a US-based driver's license and a Canadian-based driver's license, the reason they look similar is there are standards there. The same thing for mobile driver's licenses. So one of the folks who's here at the conference, I don't see him in the room, Ted Sobel, was a key part of growing the identity for mobile driver's licenses. It started in Georgia, Arizona, and has proliferated. So I think especially with the Real ID implementation, that has also been accepted by TSA through checkpoints as an approved travel document. In fact, the other thing that the tourism industry could also promote in Canada is the United States has moved towards the availability of passports to be on the Apple Wallet or Google Wallet. That's something we need to catch up on as well from a Canadian perspective, because the different kinds of digital ID, as well as this is truly privacy protected. So I control that. If I decide to release it to an airline or a border authority or TSA, that's fully within my control. So that's something to think about. And as a cousin for that as well, we also need to look at Indigenous reconciliation, because there are more than enough cases where the multiplicity of identity documents that are available, they're hard to be able to fully look at a piece of paper that's not digitized. But there may be a good news story around, let's not try to create a central government database. That's not appropriate, but have the user control of identity. And that will also help and also make our lives for border officers easier in terms of being able to know, is this really a valid identity? So there are lots of things that could be Indigenous tourism related, Indigenous communities, but also to leapfrogging kind of technology. So, and the voice of tourism is really, really important in that regard.
Well, that is a wonderful opportunity that it sounds like we should talk about more, and maybe we can go state by state and province by province on the dashboard and indicate who's in and who's out in terms of adopting technology or moving towards, or some kind of progress meter as we try and make the mobile driver's license popular. So we are moving on to the Know Before You Go project, which I'm very excited about. So Solomon, would you like to introduce the next speaker?
Sure, thanks. And we're also indebted to Pacifican also in terms of the level of support, so that a lot of what we're studying here, trying to get implementable things ready for June next year, but it's so critical in terms of the know before you go. So I'd like to introduce Laura Dawson and Jack Rulos. If it can come up to the front, please. So that we are able to demo some of the things associated with know before you go. So far, in terms of talking about the fan zone, looking at different kinds of things, we also recognize that we're here to roll the red carpet for foreign visitors as well. But foreign visitors may require visas, could be travel authorizations, it could be different kinds of things. Web Summit just happened in Vancouver. We had enough cases of folks going up to Web Summit who didn't have the right information for know before you go. So I now understand Bellingham's going to have a place for folks to be able to have a great experience if they're not able to come through. I've worked with Laura for a long time now when she was at the US Embassy in Ottawa, and through successive efforts of looking at the work at the Canada Institute, Wilson Center to Amazon, and now as head of Future Borders Coalition. Immediately after 9/11, there were 6 separate groups looking at what you can actually do for modernizing the US-Canada border. But we're now at the point where Laura's leadership of a truly binational effort is really critical to springboarding solutions ahead. And Jack Roloffs, who I've had a number of chances to have the genius of artificial intelligence and some aspects of programming. It's one of those use cases in terms of theming for things we've heard from this conference around what is the future for our region. I think we have the ambition to just rocket ahead towards solutions that can be self-learning, especially when this story is going to change 10 more times. So over to you, Laura, to kick us off in terms of the demo with Jack.
Thanks so much, Solomon. Okay, with the exception of maybe Michael Zurich, how many of you know if your cousin from England calls you up and says, I want to come for World Cup, do I need an I-94, an ETA, an ESTA, or a visa? Okay, the guy from CBP and the 2 people from CBP know the answer. Michael Zurich probably knows the answer. Anybody else? Okay, Lori, Border Policy Research Institute. It is an alphabet soup of requirements, and it's a little bit different for everyone. And I'm a border person, and I had to look that up because I wasn't quite sure. And so we've been, a Future Borders Coalition was a product. We're the stepchild, the love child of Penware. We were started in 2018 through the leadership of Jerry Bruno and Matt Morrison. And we have become the leading binational US-Canada travel and tour business government organization. We're problem solvers. We try to fix things. So we've been working with Lori and with Solomon, with Dave, with Penware to get underneath this planning for World Cup 2026 and to figure out what are the problems that we should solve, that we need to solve. Consulting a lot with folks like CBP and CBSA to try to figure out
where we need to go and to get really practical and really granular. And I've been so impressed by the leadership coming out of the Pacific Northwest on how to manage this. The people in the center part of our two countries really could take a page from the book that you all are writing out here. And so, next slides, please. When we were talking to folks about what could be done, should be done, we started with some fairly elevated ideas of, wouldn't it be great to have a single card that was your visa and your game ticket and your airplane ticket and everything else all in a single app? Well, we backed up. We know that that is not possible. But in consulting with our friends who actually work at the borders, that the biggest problem we have is people arriving and not knowing what they need to have, not having the right documentation, not understanding what the process is going to be like. If we can find a way to sort of get information to people in advance of all of this multiplicity of border requirements, that would really reduce congestion, give us the time that we need to focus on high needs travelers and let the lower needs travelers go through relatively easy. And that was a period before we had this heightened level of border anxiety. People just, I'm not sure if I can cross the border. Should I cross the border? And our media is not helping. Our media is, I get really frustrated with it actually, because I know about the hardworking men and women who work at our borders every single day, who live in our communities and just want to get the job done professionally and efficiently and do what they need to do. And all of us are also challenged by the fact that border rules are changing sometimes overnight. My friend Jack here, he's like, how often do we need to scrape these sites? How often do we need to refresh? And lately it has been like every day, right? Because rules are changing. And so what we sought to do with this Know Before You Go site was to find a way to streamline the traveler journey by providing people with the information they needed before they arrived and also giving them the confidence that they need. And so I was complaining about this challenge on the phone one day to my friend and former colleague from Amazon, Jack. He and I have a phone call sort of once a month. And we usually just talk about books we're reading and stuff we're doing. But I said, I really wish, we had a tool that would help with this border stuff. Just so happens Jack is also an AI developer specializing in the defense and security industry, but he said, I can build that. I think I can do that. So Jack has been working with us on this project over the past several months to do a really incredible, elegant technology tool, AI-driven technology tool that only scrapes official government websites. It doesn't put you in touch with immigration consultants. It doesn't scrape Wikipedia. It only goes through authorized government websites to get the legitimate information you need in record time. And oh, by the way, it'll deliver it in your language of origin pretty much instantaneously. Next slide, please. So this is the technical stuff. Generative AI powered web portal provides clear information about admissibility to the United States, Canada, and Mexico, land, air, and sea. It's context aware, real time, targeted, results in seconds in your preferred language. Next slide, please. As I said, it's reliable. It only uses government supplied data. It's robust. We've got all sorts of chunky support. It's not going to break down. It's the same stuff that NASA runs on is running our site. It's free, no cost to users. It operates a little bit like the Google Maps, or maybe if any of you are familiar with Rome to Rio, kind of that, where you just have to put in the data, you share your data about country of origin, where you're flying to, where you plan to drive across to, and it'll tell you all the things you need in order to do that. It's free, and also legal disclaimers. This does not substitute for legal advice. If you have a complex situation, you should certainly consult with a lawyer, immigration consultant. So this is just a way to build knowledge, build trust, and build awareness. Next slide, please. It's going to be great for World Cup, especially once we get to that December announcement of what games are going to be where. It can be embedded into your website. It can be a freestanding app. It is a freestanding site on its own. Yeah, so next slide, please. We also are going to be able to generate great user data out of this. We will know where people are making the most inquiries from. In what languages are they requesting? We will be able to, the data is anonymized, but we will be able to share that kind of who's asking what kinds of questions from where as we get into this this process. And in addition to the what do you need specifically to cross the border, we have an FAQ section, which is all those other things you can't really get at with just a quick Q&A. It's like, okay, can I cross the border with my dog? Can I rent a car? What are can I bring cannabis across the border? These are the kind of FAQs that come up from time to time, and we'll be able to rank these. So the more people that ask the questions, the higher up on the list it'll get, and the more that we can develop new FAQs. We have had great partners with Canada, CBSA, with US CBP and DHS, and Canada's IRCC in helping us both bug fix and identify questions, as well as giving us some access to data that's easy and clear to get at. Next slide. And that's it. So we are ready we're sharing with you the launch today, but we also need to work with you on issues like moving it forward, getting it to the audiences that need to hear from it, hear about it. We need to work with you on issues of sustainability to make sure we can afford its care and feeding. And we're extremely excited about this. So I'm going to turn it over to, we used to call him Amazon Jack, but he's no longer with Amazon. He's Jack from Polymathics LLC. And while we were sitting at this table, Jack was actually writing new code. So it's been improved in real time, as we say. Jack, the floor is yours. Can you bring your laptop out here maybe and use this mic, or do you want a handheld mic? Okay.
All right, Master Ben, if you can switch it over. Thank you very much. All right, I'm Jack, formerly Amazon Jack. So when Laura talked to me about this initially, we started spitballing, and several of you have probably seen various iterations when we originally did the mock-ups. They look a little bit shinier now. But while generative AI has a component of this, your traditional components are even more important here, because there's a lot that has to go on under the hood to be able to make this sort of thing work. But because it's more fun to delay the gratification, I'm going to tell you some of those things that are going on here. So we do have a list of official sources from US, Canada, and Mexico. And those are where the entry requirements are largely coming from right now. The only things that are coming from additional places is the modules for the embassies and consulates. That is coming from both those sources as well as the passport issuing countries' official web sources. There's a lot going on with the various components of the content that is not generative AI. For instance, pulling the information from those sources means identifying those sources, being able to scrape and cache those sources and be able to preserve that up. That doesn't have a generative AI component in the actual data itself. Where generative AI comes in that is to be able to compose those pieces together to be able to make that a coherent whole. Because what we're actually scraping from these formal websites, sometimes it's not exactly the prettiest text, sometimes it's not the easiest to read. One of the things we're really trying to do here is make sure that this makes sense to an absolute novice traveler, somebody who has never come to country A, B, or C before, and try and give them the best information possible.
I can hold the mic and you can talk and
Okay.
walk and talk.
All right. So I would like to show that I think I got. I would like to show that we did use generative AI to make this picture, because that does not exist in reality. But I happen to love all three of these cities, so it's very important to me. So the initial disclaimer that we were talking about is here, the information that verify your personal requirements with the government sources. And this is just the landing page, and it will look markedly similar on mobile as well. And this is not built on my computer and running from my computer. This is running from Amazon Web Services right now. Yes, we're a little bit biased because we came from there, but I also think it's a fantastic place to be able to build these sort of applications. So this is all you initially see on the screen here. Then we're going to go ahead and choose. This is the only interface that they have, these drop-down menus. Passport country, destination country. And those are really the only things you have to put in. You'll get results out of that. But if you want to get a little bit more specific guidance, you can put in your departure country because that may be different than your passport country, and that does have implications. Their destination city, where should they go? All right, that was quick. We're going to say they're arriving by air, and we'll say the preferred language is English. Now, we do have language support for 27. However, I did tear that apart yesterday because I'm moving it to AWS Translate, because that turned out to be a much more efficient way of being able to load that through. I'll show you what the results look like for that, but we do have that capability. And then we'll do get requirements. Now, right now, this is not running off of the CloudFront distributions, which push the content closer to the edge. But this is what we have initially here. So that delay you had, that is what you would see on worst case scenario. As we push these out to CloudFront distributions, that should be even less. The initial thing that you get is this at a glance section, which gives you some rough estimates on what your trip is going to cost. And the biggest part of that right now is airfare and hotel. If you look, we had a duration. That is what we're looking at right now. They can specify any, and as they specify within the World Cup range, they'll get additional information that is specific to that. And a lot of that is specific alerts on the high volume, whatever's going on. And there's a component that will pull the real-time alerting from the three nations to be able to incorporate both into their direct guidance and to trigger an additional scraping if we need to be able to do it more rapidly, because my president just decided he's going to change something else for the third time today, and that has an impact. Never happens, right? Right. You get a nice little display of where they're going to. Here are the entry requirements. Here for Argentina, it's telling you a B1, B2. The processing time is going to vary by the embassy and consulate. If we have different types of authorizations, you'll see different processing times associated with it. The direct requirements for the passports, or the requirements for the documents associated with it. Then the timeline, so when they need to start processing this to be able to manage. Now, since we chose today as their travel start date, they don't get an option to do all the stuff in advance. However, if we do one long enough in advance, it'll break that down by, you need to by March, do this. Now, the currents, these are additional pieces. These are not coming from, the practical information is not coming from the government sources. So these are pulled from various other, we got APIs for weather, for exchange rates, and we built boilerplate for specific travel information, for the general pieces for if you want to be able to use rideshare in Canada, what does that look like? So some of that's in here, more of that is on the FAQ piece that we'll see here. Here are the sources that are actually being used for it. And they can copy this directly.
You go to the site. Yeah.
And they can copy these directly, so they can save these. Now, if you remember, the only information that the user is providing are these. There's no personally identifying information in here at all. So we get to play a little bit looser with the rules associated with that, because we're not grabbing that sort of really identifiable information. But this does provide, as Laura said, a lot of good information for everybody to see. All right, I'm getting a lot of interest from Cameroon, from Spain, coming to Vancouver, Toronto, Seattle, Montreal. That becomes really useful for being able to target this a little bit more. Now, with the additional information I mentioned, our FAQ section in here is based off of a series of initial about 50 questions, and then choose the country you're going to. So what documents do you need? The general information, the rideshare. Is rideshare legal? Yes, in the US, Lyft and Uber. What is it in Mexico? Bolt and Didi, I have no idea what that is.
It's got some drug information, cannabis.
Right. So what is going to make you ineligible for admittance? based off of the country. We have that in here, but that also will show up in their specific guidance. We'll show you a little bit more of what that looks like. Now, you may notice that these say they have a reference associated with them. This one says K38. Okay. What does that mean? Well, here are the references for everything in the FAQ, so they can go through and see exactly what that is. And I'll active link these as well. But that's just the window dressing. Let's go to a more complex case than Argentina. What happens if somebody from China is trying to come for World Cup? Nope. And where should they go this time? Someplace other than Seattle. We're on US because we want to show the specifics for the US. Kansas City, here we go. Now this is residual from the last one. Now, there it goes. Airplane went across. It says Kansas is hot right now. Right now, the API data for the weather, we have real time for the next 5 days. Then it's going to be the long range forecast, which don't have as much detail. If you see the climate piece, it tells you what the real feel is like and all that good stuff. You don't have that level of granularity if we go out past 5 or 10 days. Let's see what the entry requirements are. Okay, it says there's a visa requirement. All right, interesting. Here's what it says it looks like. Here's what that is. But look what populates here. This met the protocol within the logic for specific access programs, and it says that you need an EVIS for this. And this is the situation where that's going to matter. Okay? And here's special conditions for this. And it really just says that one for EVIS. If you look at Canada, let's just change it straight over to Canada and to Vancouver.
By air or we're going by land?
Well, it'd be really interesting to go from China to Canada by land.
No. Sorry, I'm actually a Chinese person going. Yeah, never mind.
What matters there is a little bit odd. So we just said China going to Canada. But under our special conditions, we have something about US permanent residents. It seemed like an error. No, not if you understand what a permanent resident in the US, a Chinese passport holder going to Canada may have for the requirements.
Can we go backwards from it?
The language functionality I actually tore apart yesterday, but I did pull the one I did for Ty for that. Oop. So when you do the copy function, you pull the entire listing of the results that are out of it and then runs through translation. Initially, we were using a Claude translation off of that. But while that is useful, it actually has a significant lag time with it because it's not dedicated specifically to that. If you want to do real-time translation, the absolute best way that I've been able to find thus far, and the fastest way, has been with AWS Amazon Translate. And that's used in a variety of legal and political settings as well, and law enforcement. So this is, I don't actually speak Thai. Does anybody here? This group, we got to have one.
Come in. I can.
Yeah, I can't pull that up right now. But that is what this looks like at this point. But so where we're sitting right now, we're pulling and scraping the information from the official US sources twice daily. We modify that as we need to. We're pulling from the embassy listings from the passport issuance countries every week at this point. We'll see if there's how we want to change that around. Right now, this is probably optimized today based off of a user using this from a laptop or from a computer, but this also was built from a mobile first perspective. I just need to see where that sits right now to make sure everything is still going smoothly in that direction. Sir. Say that again. That is an absolutely great point, and I hadn't done that, but that would be a very easy conversion to do because that's simple math. I like that.
Good.
I'll add it to my open items list. And one thing I would really love, I can push the URLs for this out. They'll last for 3 or 4 days at this point. That way you're not going to be running against something that is too outdated, but I would love to get feedback and we can socialize that out and get more and more information and get your perspectives on what you'd like to see with this and how it would be useful, where you're seeing some issues, because with 195 plus, the plus is because countries that get added or subtracted from the global list on a more regular basis than I actually expected. That's a lot to keep track of and a lot to validate. And we find there's conflicting information sources, even from our government sources. It never happens, right? But yeah, that proves to be a little bit interesting. So all the eyes I can get on this, the better. What this can actually support in terms of concurrent users right now, I've been running thousands and up to 3,000 concurrent users at a query time. And I've been doing this in excess of 10,000 a day. The infrastructure that is riding on AWS is, for all intents and purposes, infinitely scaled. So it can support a tremendous amount. The way that it has been architected is taking advantage of the scraping and the caching. So there's not a lot that is going to be extraordinarily time dependent. As you saw here, this is a real time poll when we were doing both of these. And that's not a very big lag. And it will be down a little bit more once we do CloudFront distributions, which push the content out closer to edge, which is very important and necessary when you're talking about a global population.
So at this stage, we've got some time before we have our final remarks at 3:35, so about 9 minutes for questions for our demo here. Just to underscore, this is very much a resource for this community, not just for FIFA, but also for the long term to dispel some myths. Donovan, you've got a question. Go ahead.
Donovan, give us a hard question. This is Donovan DeLuz, the port director in Orville, Washington, one of our CBP buddies.
Hi there. So yeah, I would normally stand, but it doesn't really change the view for anybody. I don't really have any questions, but I do have a couple of statements. One, I know my next favorite website on my work computer because this is fantastic. This is great for us because the last thing that we want to do is get tied up with people that have confusion when they get to the border, because quite frankly, we have other things that we want to do. So thank you for this. And there's one piece that I want to go back to because I've heard it bounced around a couple of times over the last couple of days. And that's Real ID versus an enhanced driver's license. There's some confusion there because we get folks showing up at the border with Real ID, which is in every state at this point, and enhanced driver's license are only in a few. A Real ID does not allow for you to travel internationally, whether it be land, border, ferry, definitely not in the air. Well, air environment domestically, yes. But I just want to bring that up because we're in a room of people that are going to be talking to folks that are going to be traveling in mass amounts here in the next little bit. So when you're having these discussions, please make sure that our U.S. travelers know the difference between a Real ID and an enhanced ID or enhanced driver's license, because we have people that have that confusion now. And sometimes it's on the states. We have states, inland states. I've had people from Kansas and Nebraska showing up at the border with the Real IDs telling me that is a international travel document. I'm like, that's funny because I'm fairly good at this. And so if that messaging can go out there, it's kind of the a square is a rectangle is not a square, and people get confused with that.
That's a great point. And that becomes FAQ number 39, the Real ID EDL question. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really brought to our attention the need for this was, border admissibility requirements are different depending on how you arrive. If you arrive by air versus if you arrive by land, those can be very different. And it could potentially end up with certain passenger groups from certain countries ended up stranded on one side of the border or another unintentionally. So that's why our admissibility requirements cover all the modes, because there are differences. And while our border officials do a really good job to try to paper over those cracks, it would be even better if people knew the rules before they arrived and tried to do something that was a little bit challenging.
We've got a question here from Anna, and then.
Thanks very much. So first of all, this is tremendous, and really thank you for this work and for the demo today. The question I have is, with such an effective tool, What's the plan for diffusion? What's the plan to get this out to all of those who will then link to it and make sure that the travelers can access it?
That's a great question. Thank you. And we, that's the next, okay, how do we get over that wall? Our hope and belief is very much, this has to be a free tool. This can't be a pay to use it. So if it's a free tool, how do we get it to the maximum number of people? Ideally, our friends at FIFA would say, yes, we will put this on every ticket sales site. I'm not so sure about that. So we need to be able to provide this link to as many partners in the tourism, destination marketing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera world. We have been going back and forth about advertising. We will not be putting ads on this site, but we do need marketing partners in order to help us to both keep it up and running and fed, but also to get it to the largest number of audience members. And so Jack and I are talking about, widgets, buttons and banners and language that can be put on sites in order to direct people to the to this site. And hopefully in the process of development, we can also put together a freestanding app as well, which you'll be able to find through the App Store.
And one of the host committees was listening to this intently and asked that exact question. So just engaging that group as well. Jack, you've got comment, and then we'll have a question from the middle.
One comment and one actual criticism of this work myself. This says, right here, it says visa required for UK. That's entry requirement. It right now clumped multiple different types of entry requirements under visa. So that's something I'm fixing there. But it says it's actually this British citizen coming into the US from Canada by land. So that changes a lot of the variables in there. So it says you need an ESTA. It also says you need an I-94 if you're going to come in that way. I-94 has not been present in a requirement for any of our previous ones because previously we were only looking for air. So just to show a little bit of the distinction that happens with some of these.
So our British. So our British cousin coming for the soccer game really does have a lot of things going on, especially if he or she wants to fly to Vancouver and then drive to Seattle.
Thanks. And that answers one of the questions in the Whova app in terms of multimodal journeys. That's exactly what we're doing here in terms of this demo. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Vaughn Taylor, Seattle Metro Chamber, also the designated business support liaison for World Cup. So ton of questions for you all, so I will reach out to discuss further. But the initial question, it sounds like your need is to have more testing of a user experience, advisory groups, maybe with city partners or maybe immigrant-owned business owners or people who are connected overseas. Is that something you're looking for? If so, I think we can support with that in some way.
Would absolutely love that. Getting the broadest set of feedback is going to be the most important piece. And it's going to be specifically or particularly challenging with this because we literally need a global perspective and ideally folks that have no idea what's going on here whatsoever. And that's a little bit hard to find in the backyard.
We can probably help with that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Oh, we've got one from this side. Go ahead.
So obviously with the drop-down menus, there's not going to be a lot of random user input. Is that going to help prevent any AI hallucinations, that kind of thing that could give users wrong information?
That's a good and very loaded question. So anytime doesn't really matter what your input sources are. If you're going to be dealing with an AI generative tool, you're never going to be able to eliminate hallucination. You have to work very specifically with what your inputs are. You always constrain the inputs. What we're doing here with the drop-down menus is a mammoth constraint on those inputs, but it's definitely not sufficient in and of itself. But if anybody really likes to see this stuff, I'd love to show you the logic we developed specifically for that, because that was probably the long pole in this effort. And it is pretty interesting. But with this, yes, we are constrained by the inputs, but we're much further constrained by the guardrailing and the protocols that are attached to the AI generation components, which I think I indicated are about composability and not content generation. So there's a big difference when you deal with that, when we're talking about hallucination and confabulation, invention, placeholder, example materials, which are a hallmark of almost everything you're going to deal with text-based generative AI.
Great. If there aren't any other questions, please a round of applause for Laura and Jack.
Jack and I did book one of the meeting rooms. I believe it's Cottonwoods on this floor for the half hour following this meeting. If anyone wants to follow up right away, we'll be sitting there talking about stuff. And otherwise, you've got my contact information, our contact information. We're easy to find. We do want to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. And we do have a few more minutes here. And so, and there was a answer to one of the questions that was asked about the fan zones, whether they'll be showing non-local games. And April Putney from the Seattle FIFA World Cup 26 local organizing committee, she says, the Seattle fan celebration, I guess it's not zone, the Seattle fan celebration will show all of the matches that are playing on the days that we are activated. So check the schedule before you take the lift or Uber or walk down there. All right, so with that, if the speakers would be willing to close, any closing remarks you may have prepared, or tell us what you would like for us to take away from everything else, in addition to everything else that we've absorbed. Your last wise words of advice, please. Solomon, would you like to start?
Yeah. I think from the standpoint of the engagement that we had with the former U.S. Consul General in Vancouver, DeHart, in terms of convening a session in April, and then the May session that Pacifican funded for Penware Canada to gather together different stakeholders. Talking to Doug and Tara, we've realized we actually need to have additional sessions to engage and make sure that we both prep, share information, the maturation of what you just saw in terms of the know before you go demo, but also December's a time when the matches will be drawn, and we do need to stand that up a bit more in terms of this conversation, both to Donovan's point, accurate information for what's happening today, separate that from wish list items for things that will be policy or transformative changes, but if both have that information shared so that we can prep for that. But I also would defer also to other panelists in terms of any closing remarks before we call this session to a close.
Thanks. I mean, I think you said it well, Solomon, and I would just, you know what, one of my key takeaways is actually now is the time where the connections and the collaborative action to share out what has been discussed, what has been generated, the good work that has been done is needed. And so I think that's where everyone involved in Penware can activate and really support all of the great work that's been done by these folks. Thanks.
I guess I would just say, I started my remarks with facing a challenging time for cross-border collaboration, for cross-border travel. And when I do media interviews or whatever, and there's always that question, what's the final thing you want to add? I'd like to point out that FIFA is a great opportunity for us to work together on something that is fun, that is less political than some of the politics we're facing now, and that really brings benefits to both sides of the border. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the innovation that we can bring, the data we can collect, and eventually the policies maybe we can implement.
Really what I was going to say is to close is go ahead and rent your house out in Seattle, head up to Bellingham. It's going to be really more affordable, and it's going to be laid back yet, but really exciting. So that's it for me. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, panelists and Amazon, the man formerly known as Amazon Jack. That's what you're going to be called now. We had a conversation about a year ago, Jack, which I vaguely understood when we communicated with each other. And it's so satisfying to me now to see the results of that because we were way up here. But I think we met at Consul General DeHart's back garden and we talked about this and you were so excited because I said in my own language this and you went, I know what you're talking about. I never have that happen when I try and describe something. So thank you to everybody and Solomon and Nana. And this has really been a lesson in the United Nations of Tourism coming together because that's what it takes. Tourism is an ecosystem and there are so many players and people and personalities, and that's what makes our sector fun. But we at the root have some challenges that, my goodness, 5 years ago, would be difficult to solve the FIFA conundrum. And we have such an opportunity, and I take Lori's words to heart. Let's find something good to do in the countdown to FIFA, no matter what it is. If there's something that we can support for the border, even if it's just publicizing the portal when it's ready to go or contributing to feeding back on Celsius versus Fahrenheit, whatever it's going to take. Kelvins too. Well, then maybe that's what's going to make this, I think, just an industry best practice. And that is what the Pinware region, I really believe it now. I see it. You know, we're known for being innovative and collaborative, and it's because of everybody here. And it's a privilege. It's really a privilege to be able to come to something like this. And I think we have to be grateful and thankful for that privilege. Not everybody in the world gets to come together with superstars and have great conversations like this. So thank you, everybody. A group photo. Okay, let's do that. We're gonna you're gonna conduct this, Madam President.